Hey, what's going on, people? It's VenomousFatman here with ShiftedToYou.com. I'm here on the BITT, the boys in the tube. Right now, I'm sitting next to John Harrington, aka OJ, from Schnozman and Hole Punch, as well as the show with John Rambo on John Rambo Presents. What's going on, OJ?
Not a whole heck of a lot. Just hanging out, vacuum in the other room.
Awesome. So, with that being said, before in part one, we talked about, some beginning stuff, origins into gaming, how you met John, how you met Phil, your trip to Tokyo, or not Tokyo, but just to Japan, just in general for Togeki, which is super bad opera. But let's get into some other stuff, bouncing off of Japan,
Hmm.
you're a big anime fan. If
A
which
bit.
a bit
Yeah.
a bit, since the last time I was on the show, we talked a little bit about some anime, but let's kind of get more into depth with it. Well, how was your introduction into anime and stuff? How did you get first into that stuff?
That started mostly with a kid who lived in my neighborhood who was friends with myself and John and my friend Mark. And he basically was like, "Hello, this is Trigun. You're going to watch this now." I'm like, "Okay." And he also got me a couple other series to watch. Started with Trigun, then there was Cowboy Bebop was a little bit later. Evangelion was right there in the beginning. And
All
then
good
oddly
animes.
enough,
All very good animes.
and then Flame of Recca, interestingly enough, that was another early one for me, which is not as good as the other ones, but when you're in middle school and it's one of the first things you see, it's still pretty neat.
I mean, back in the day, I mean, did you ever grow up watching Toonami? Let me just ask you that
Yep.
shit up front. Like, I mean,
Yep.
what did you think of Toonami? Just, in a couple sentences.
I mean, I think it was a good way to get some of these shows out to people and let people get some more interest in the genre before advancing to actual stuff, maybe with less editing and sometimes actually using subtitles instead of dubs.
Yeah, so, but let me ask you that. Were you into anime before you got into Toonami? Because I know there's a lot of old school cats out there that were into anime, watching the real good stuff, maybe importing from Japan, but way before Toonami was even around on Cartoon Network. But what was it like for you?
Well, for me, it was, oh, so this stuff is actually on Cartoon Network now? That makes it a whole lot easier to watch. My friend, like one of my friends, he just had this stuff, so we watched it with him. And then when Toonami came out, we're like, oh, well, I guess I can watch two things now. It made it. I mean, it made it a lot easier. I'd been watching it beforehand, and then once I finally got a job in high school, I could actually start buying my own stuff too every now and then. So, Toonami, I think it was before Toonami. I was just glad that other people could watch it, though the hipster part of me was kind of like, oh no, you have to watch it subtitled and uncut.
The
Eh.
the real purist mentality almost. Got me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as much of a snot now, but in middle school, you have to be snooty about something.
Wow. But with that going, kind of springboarding off of that, what did you think when Tsunami what got pulled off the air? Because, we got to talk about this. When Tsunami went down, it was a big blow to a lot of people, especially if you grew up with it. And at the same time, or better yet, before I even get into that, tell me about, what was it like for you when Tsunami went off the air?
I was kind of bummed. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what year that was?
Oh
Gosh.
man, that was like, a good while ago. That had to be, a little after 2000, something like that.
Yes. That must have been either when I was like in my later years of high school, probably. And at that point, I mean, I was pretty sad to see it go. But at that point, I think started working at Toys R Us of all places, and I had a little bit of a paycheck. So if I needed to get my fix, I could acquire it. But I mean, just where else were you going to watch that stuff once it was off like once Tsunami was gone? Where were you going to see some of those things? Those shows were pretty much gone, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, you could go online at the time. I mean, it was a little bit different than what it was now or what it is
Wild
now.
West back then.
But when it went off the air, there wasn't really a spot that you could go. You could, if you had cable, maybe you could catch a few shows here and there, like
Yeah,
Van Dread or something like that. But
but
once it was gone, it was gone.
yeah, I mean, after that, I mean, the only time I was going to see anything was like randomly 5 minutes of Demon City Shinjuku on the Sci-Fi Channel, and that
Oh
was the most I'd
God.
see.
Oh my God, sci-fi. To me, sci-fi was like one of the worst spots to watch anime. It's like it was just so bad. I mean, it was one thing with Cinemax, or I think it was Cinemax, something like that.
Yeah,
One of the like movie channels where they had like a couple shows here and there, but just
yeah.
sci-fi was just like, what am I watching? Like,
What did you do?
but let me kind of go off from that as well. What did you think? Like, recently we just had, the whole April Fool's joke that Cartoon Network, played on us, which to me and to a lot of other anime fans was like opening old wounds. Like it just hit right there, for the moment. Like that same night, nobody that group that knew what Tsunami was went to sleep that night. What was it like for you?
Just don't. I mean, my deal with that was like I don't have cable right now. I just have cable internet, so it didn't hit me as hard. But like, you don't taunt people, man. You know, like, what are you doing? Who are you? I mean, Cartoon Network, you've got Adult Swim, and I'm kind of happy you had some cool stuff on there, but don't taunt people about Toonami, man. That little dude from back in the day before they gave him his
Tom,
weird pregnant stomach. Yeah. I mean, come on.
speaking of Tom, for the record, a little fun fact for everybody. Maybe you could attest to this as well. They kept asking on Twitter, to see if people wanted Tsunami back, and they probably got bombarded on their Twitter feed and their emails.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so that was like, a pretty like, crazy time, and I'm pretty sure, I hope to God that they were bringing it back. Should they bring Toonami back, OJ?
I think it's worth a shot if they're the trick is putting on good programming that hasn't been butchered.
Yeah.
Like that's always the worry. Always the worry getting anime on like a cable network.
Yeah, so let's talk about this though, since you mentioned, subtitles and stuff like that, what's like the optimal way to watch anime? Like for me personally, it's always different. It's not usually necessarily just dubs or subs like that. Usually it's on an anime to anime basis. Like, for
Mm.
example, I can't watch the subbed version of Dragon Ball Z because Goku's voice is just way too annoying for me. I can't stand it, but it might be different for some people. What's your stance on the whole thing?
I mean, I could see it going on a series by series basis. I mean, I prefer to watch stuff in Japanese mostly so I can lie to myself and say I'm practicing the language. But I mean, I've seen a lot of shows like I watched all of Darker Than Black in English, and the later the late as more time goes on, the dubs are getting better. I mean, I still would rather watch. I mean, the dub for Cowboy Bebop was
Oh my
incredible.
God, yeah.
Don't get me
It's
wrong.
amazing.
I still prefer to watch things subtitled. I mean, I saw the second half of Code Geass in English. I
Oh,
saw all of Darker Than Black in English, and those worked pretty darn well.
oh yeah.
I mean, the English voice actors, I think. I mean, it might have been they were always doing a good job, but maybe the people who were directing them didn't really know what as much of what they were doing. I don't know back in the day, but my personal stance: prefer to watch subbed. Dubbed is okay in a lot of situations. There's sometimes when I can't stand it. For example, I watched Full Metal Alchemist, the original series, in Japanese, and then I started trying to watch Brotherhood on Netflix, which watch instantly, which is only in English, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. To me, Ed and Al have their voices, and it just doesn't work. Like if I've heard it subbed first, it's really really hard to watch it dubbed, unless it's like Code Geass where they did an awesome job.
Yeah, like the animes that you're mentioning are all great. I mean, Code Geass, Cowboy Bebop especially, and then the
Oh
spiritual successor to it, Samurai Champloo. I mean,
yeah,
all those animes are just awesome. But let me ask you this, for you personally, what's like the more optimal way to watch an anime? Would it be basically on DVD, or would it be online, or but just basically through regular standard television?
that's a tough call. I mean, because like if you're watching it on a DVD or a Blu-ray, it's great because you've probably got the whole series, but you gotta stand up to swap out the disc. And I don't know if I've got the energy for that. If I pay $35 for something, someone got to walk over, hit the button for me. I'm not standing up for that nonsense. Like I've watched, there's a few shows you can watch on Netflix, watched instantly, which are in Japanese, which was awesome because you just sit there and you're like, next episode, next episode. I think I prefer to watch if I can afford the DVDs or the Blu-ray, I prefer to watch it there, if only because I feel like I'm supporting the people who made the show more. But like if you're watching it on like something like Crunchyroll or even YouTube I mean, there's ads, but you can
Yeah,
watch a ton of shows right there for free with like 2 or 3 2-minute ads, and
Funimation
that's
even
okay.
Funimation even has like their own YouTube channel, Bandai does, where they put their shows up and you can watch them.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. If you don't want to shell the cash out for the DVDs, I'd go there next. And if that doesn't work, you got Netflix. I mean, maybe Amazon watch instantly. I don't know what they got on there, but I do like the DVD thing. I mean, I keep an eye out for sales. Like I saw Claymore was on sale on Blu-ray for $28 or for $30 or $28 for the DVDs. So I'm like, yeah, I love that show. And I had the money for it at the time, so I just picked it up. And watching that, I felt awesome. I'm like, oh man, I don't have to feel bad about getting the autograph from the English voice actor, even though I haven't actually heard the show in English.
Yeah, all right. That's pretty crazy. So let's move away a little bit from there. Let's talk about conventions a little bit because anime fans, we all go to our conventions. All as gamers, we go to conventions. You've been to a couple conventions already. For the
Hmm.
most part, from some of the videos that you've gotten to. Tell us what's it like. When you're going to a convention. What is it that you look for, or what is it that you go in expecting to have?
All right. Well, the first thing I'm really thinking about is whether I feel like bothering to dress up, because I've been too lazy to make a new costume for the past couple years. So I've been going just as me recently. So once I got that out of the way, sometimes I'll make a list of what, because there's usually some really awesome panels, some new shows are debuting, stuff like that. Stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else. But most of the time I go to these conventions, I just wander around photographing people, talking to people, walking by all the crazy nonsense for sale, and then hanging out in the artist's alley, seeing what sort of ridiculous creative things people have come up with.
That's pretty cool. So you also, during I believe I forgot which convention that it was that you guys went to. I think it was Too Many Games, or was it Magfest? I think that you were actually selling candles. Did you
Yeah,
guys?
yeah, MagFest and New York Comic Con.
Yeah, New York Comic Con. That was the other one where you actually had a table there and you were selling off candles. Like, tell us a little bit about the candles that you actually sell.
All right, well, it's pretty funny. The only reason I ended up doing these in the first place was because I was walking through a supermarket and I saw in the 50% off bin how to make gel candles. And I'm like, well, that looks interesting. I picked it up. I walked up to the register to buy it, and it wouldn't scan. And then randomly, a guy I took a community college acting class with worked at the Stop and Shop, rang it up for me for like $1. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Thank you, sir. And then from that, I just started experimenting around. So I make candles that they use a clear translucent gel that you can color and scent. So, it looks like, so you can make, so I realized you can like freeze a scene in mid shot and suspend things in there and have them floating around and whatnot. So I started making things like the first ones I made for myself were I made a scene from Super Mario Brothers with a piranha plant, a bullet bill, and another bullet bill, and some mushrooms just chilling out on the ground. Like, and the bills are flying, like they're just suspended in there. Nothing, ain't got no strings or none of that nonsense from Pinocchio. And I just thought, wow, this is pretty fun. It took a lot of time, but I'm really enjoying this. So I just started. So for my friends for Christmas, I just started throwing stuff together. Like one of my friends really liked Gurren Lagann, so I made him the symbol from Kamina's jacket and the drill, and I suspended them in there, not touching anything, just kind of floating in the middle. I made something from Slayers for another friend of mine, Sonic the Hedgehog. Like I just started making them, and then I realized, I could probably sell these. So I got back from Otakon thinking, man, I see all this cool stuff here. Why am I not doing this? So I just got in gear, found a convention I could sell at, got a friend to split the table with me because these things are expensive, and just started putting stuff together. Like I was putting together Cheap Cheeps, some custom fish. I put fairies in a bottle, and then I had another crazy idea. I have wine glasses.
Oh, there you go.
So I poured some gel in there, set the wick and everything, and I colored it red and gave it like a raspberry apple flavor. Scent, not flavor. Do not eat. Do not eat. And people just started going nuts for them. Like I was expecting like gamers and anime fans and whatnot to go nuts, but like anything that looked remotely like a beverage, people were going nuts for. So I had some root beer floats, and someone's like, "Oh, it's a Guinness." I'm like, "Yes, it's totally a Guinness and not a root beer float. Do
Wow.
smell it is cinnamon." And it worked out. So over the past 9 months, on and off, I've been putting stuff together. I've got a little bit of a stock built up, and I wanted to sell it online, but a friend of mine's like, dude, do not put those things out there until you get an LLC so no one can sue you to death, because if someone sets their house on fire, you're the first one they're going after.
Oh yeah, that's a good quote. That's a good piece of advice to
Yeah.
kind of defend yourself a little bit. But that's interesting. I mean, you have a website that's, you have
Yeah.
some of this stuff, actually on display. I'm actually looking at it now. It's geekfiregifts.com, and
Mhm.
he's got, a bunch here, on display of stuff that you're actually selling, pretty sure. And then when you go to the
Yeah.
conventions, you also sell them as well.
Hmm.
So that's pretty cool. So we're going to end this part off right here, guys. Be sure to check out the next part, which is part 3, as I continue to sit down with OJ here on the Bit. We'll talk to you all in a second.